please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
The 30 to 40 lakh rupee SUV space is either occupied by large engine, big and burly SUVs like the Fortuner or the Endeavour, or it has the smaller yet more premium vehicles like the Skoda Kodiaq or the Volkswagen Tiguan. So that leaves a void, a gap or an opportunity for a vehicle that is large enough to be a comfortable 7-seater, is fuel efficient and easy to drive. Will this, the CR-V, Honda's crossover recreational vehicle, fill in that gap? Let's find out. The CR-V, which is now in its 5th generation, may look like a minor design evolution over the outgoing CR-V, but it is indeed an all-new car that is longer, wider and taller than its predecessor and sits on a longer wheelbase and a higher ground clearance. The face has sharp features in the streamlined headlights and the chiseled bumpers, while the chunky chrome bar for the grille gives the car an imposing front end that is now familiar on most new Honda cars. I particularly like the interplay of the lighting and the chrome elements. I think it looks quite premium. The rear-end design of the CR-V has often had an uncanny resemblance to Volvo's SUVs, and this one strongly reminds me of the V90 Cross Country, thanks to the L-shaped taillights. 2 generations on, the CR-V continues to have a prominent wedge-shaped side profile, giving it a unique silhouette. The chrome lining for the rub rails seems a tad bit overdone to me, and all that bling takes attention away from the flared wheel arches and the handsome design for the alloy wheels, particularly with that C motif. If given an option, I would like to reduce all the chrome treatment on this car, especially this big bar even on the tailgate. And speaking of the tailgate, I would have also liked an electrically operated boot lid at this price point. It isn't. The struts, they're unusually long, but I like the low loading lip for a car that's this tall. You also get this removable pad that can be height adjusted. I think it's a nice idea to store away smaller things, but if they would have given us a rubber matting instead of a fabric matting, that would also help you store away wet items like boots or umbrellas. Now the boot space is a measly 150 litres with the seats up. Drop the third row and you get up to 478 litres, which is just about adequate. You heard that right, third row of seats. The CR-V is now a 7-seater, but only on the diesel variant. It isn't an MPV beater, and getting into the third row is quite difficult. The mechanism for the tumble is a little hard to operate. Once you do, getting in is quite a bit of a squeeze. Now that space is only good enough for kids. Adults can squeeze in, like Simran is showing you right now, but over long distance journeys, it's not going to be comfortable. The second row of seating is more plush in comparison. Of course, you sit a little lower, so getting in and out of the car in the second row is quite easy. Headroom could have been better. A 6-footer is definitely going to hit his head or her head against the roof. Overall visibility is quite good. The cabin has a nice airy feel to it, so you're not going to feel claustrophobic in here at all. Also, the second row seats are mounted on top of rails, which gives you about 150 millimeters of reach adjustment, and you can also recline the back for long distance comfort. The outer seats have additional squabs for better under-thigh support, but the contouring of the seats is a bit too flat for my liking. The second row bench will seat 2 adults and a kid in comfort. The cabin is loaded with up to 10 AC vents, out of which 4 come here on the roof. Now the placement so close to your head may not be to everybody's liking, but they aim to keep things pleasant for the second and the third row occupants. You also get a center armrest, floor-mounted AC vents and 2 USB sockets for the second row. The panoramic roof makes the cabin quite an airy place to be in and is very comfortable for the chauffeur-driven type as well. In fact, it can also give the luxury sedans or the entry-level luxury sedans a run for their money. The driver's seat is also a nice place to be in, and the moment you enter the cabin, the first thing that you will notice is how premium and how up-to-date the cabin feels when you compare it to its larger competitors. I like the premium materials used, I like the overall fit and finish, and I also like how tastefully the whole layout of the dashboard is. I particularly like the 7-inch touchscreen. It looks like a proper semi-floating layout. It is in line with the instrumentation, so it's easy to read. What I do not like is, 1, it doesn't get satellite navigation, and 2, the user interface is a little tacky in the way the colors and the fonts have been used. I would have liked it. It would match the sportier layout of the fully digital instrumentation, and that instrumentation is quite feature-rich and easy to use as well. There's quite a bit of usable space in the tunnel console as well. I would have really liked this to be a wireless charging pad. Unfortunately, it isn't, but not a big problem because you have two USB ports inside, one 12-volt socket in here, one 12-volt socket outside. So charging your gadgets is not going to be a problem at all. Also, the space utilization is quite good. This is removable as well. So you have a lot of space in here. This can be nicely stored away in here. So space utilization on the tunnel console is top class. All the controls fall easily at hand, and the gear selector is placed on the center console in typical CR-V fashion. The petrol CVT gets a conventional selector, but for the diesel automatic, you get a simple switch gear now, and that needs getting used to. It is complemented by paddle shifters behind the wheel. All these are mated to a new 9-speed automatic gearbox that is paired with a diesel engine. Right then, the all-important part of the new CR-V, the 1.6-litre 4-cylinder turbocharged diesel engine. I know you're already cringing at that displacement, and when I tell you it only puts out 120 PS of power, you'll probably frown too. You should. I did too. Especially when I know that there's a twin turbocharged 160 PS version of this engine out there. But very frankly, I've been driving this car all day, and the 300 Newton meters of torque and that 9-speed gearbox have been nicely masking that power deficit. Honda assures that using this engine instead will help reduce the sticker price of the car. The humble power also claims to make the engine extremely fuel efficient and low on CO2 emissions despite the 1.7-ton weight of the car. To that effect, there's also an Econ mode, which thankfully doesn't dull down throttle response by much. The engine is a tad bit noisy at low RPMs, but smoothens out between 2000 to 3000 RPM. There are hardly any pedal vibrations to complain of, and the NVH is premium class. But the real gem of this drivetrain is the 9-speed automatic transmission that never seems to be in the wrong gear. It is quick to respond to part or full throttle, and the shifts are surprisingly seamless for a torque converter. The engine gets off the mark quite easily, and even its overall mid-range acceleration is quite good. At highway speeds, it also runs quite relaxed. In fact, so relaxed that it only takes about 1800 RPM to maintain a cruising speed of 100 kilometers an hour, and it's not even using the 9th gear. It's still in 7th gear. In fact, it even refuses to move to the 8th or the 9th gear at that speed. That's how relaxed this engine runs. It's only when you're trying to pull overtakes at highway speeds that you do feel that it could have done with a little bit more power, maybe 10-20 PS more. But otherwise, I think this engine is quite good. It does most of its jobs quite well. It's not a very sprightly motor, but it is adequate to say the least. If you have liked the previous CR-V just the way it has been, then you might find the new CR-V Petrol to be the more attractive choice. It uses the refined and hard-to-falter 2-litre i-dtec 4-cylinder petrol engine. It trades in the older and the slower 5-speed automatic gearbox for a relatively responsive CVT. The new gearbox has a fair display of the inherent rubber band effect, but the strong mid-range torque of the petrol engine makes sure that the drivetrain isn't grinding annoyingly for too long. The only way to tell the petrol variant from the diesel is the absence of cooling ducts under the daytime running lights on the outside, and of course the i-dtec badge on the tailgate. Like before, the CR-V isn't an aggressive SUV for the throttle mashers. Instead, both the petrol and the diesel variants are excellent highway cruisers and efficient urban soft-roaders that can keep you entertained. The new CR-V is predominantly front-wheel driven. The petrol version only comes in that front-wheel drive configuration. The diesel can also be specified with an all-wheel drive. Now, that all-wheel drive system can help you go for mild off-roading trails, can help you go to your farmhouse, but it is primarily designed or tuned for the urban use. By that I mean, like I said, it's predominantly front-wheel driven, and only up to 40% of the torque can be sent to the rear wheels. However, if you're at an incline, then it will try to provide as much torque to the rear wheels as possible, because pushing is easier than pulling. Also, when you're driving this car a little harder around switchbacks or fast bends, it will also brake the inner wheels to give it a slightly more agile handling. So from that point of view, the AWD is more safety driven, or is more urban driven, like I said, than really taking it off the road. There's no AWD lock either. But overall, it works very discreetly. and it works quite well. Out here in Rajasthan, we have only been driving on arrow straight highways, no twisty roads, so all of that with the road test. The CR-V has a decent 208 mm ground clearance, and the suspension is tuned nicely for the Indian road conditions. Honda claims to have benchmarked the ride and handling of this car against luxury crossovers from a segment above, and that shows. The ride is soft, but the body roll isn't unnerving. The braking is progressive and confident. Around bends, it feels quite nimble compared to the tall riding and heavy body-on-frame SUVs, and that makes it quite easy to drive for those upgrading from mid-size sedans or SUVs. In terms of safety, the cabin is secured with up to 6 airbags. You also have ABS, EBD, you also have the agile cornering that I spoke of, you have the electronic stability program as well. And you also have this lane watch camera, which is mounted on the outside rearview mirror on the left hand side. So every time you use your left indicator stalk, or if you press this little switch on the indicator stalk, it will pull up the feed from that camera onto the display. So that clearly shows you what's in your blind spot. I think it's a very nice system to have in a country like India. And we already saw this system on the new Accord, and now it makes its way onto the CR-V as well. In terms of safety rating, the car has already won a 5-star rating at the Asian NCAP. And the good news is that the top spec of the CR-V that you will be able to buy in India is the same specification of the car that was sent for the evaluation at the Asian NCAP. In terms of its spec, its natural rival is the Hyundai Tucson, but the CR-V comes across as a more premium car. Its sizing puts it right in between the Kodiaq and the Fortuner. To answer the question that we began with then, yes, the CR-V does plug the gap, and quite perfectly at that. To sum it up then, the new CR-V is a car that you should not write off on the basis of its specs. While I have expressed my wish of having a better kit on it, the engineering is top-notch, and that is evident the moment you drive the car. The CR-V has proved its mettle around the globe, and frankly, it isn't hard to see why.